leave this at the discretion of the council at this point in time. Mr. Solicitor? There you go.
Mr. President, can I just make one request? Can we put back up the chart that shows the proposed development, that what we're going to vote on or not, because I think it's important for us to look at that. Well, the lot map, whatever we call it, that.
Thank you.
That's it.
So I'm just going to refer the council to the agenda for a second. The first ordinance that was posted under this public hearing was the proposal that the developer proposed on May 11, 2021. That was the original proposal that went to the planning board after referral by this council. That has been substantially changed based upon planning board input, which is reflected on item 2 on the agenda. And in the interest of transparency and according to the wishes of the council president and after speaking with the clerk, we actually did post both ordinances, the original May 11, 2021, and then a red line version of the proposed ordinance as recommended by the planning board after public meetings and public input by all individuals involved, including members of the public who are free to attend and did testify before the planning board on the zone change. So any notion that the public was kept out of this process or was behind the scenes is frankly not true. But so I would ask that when we get to it, that we table, definitely table A1I on the agenda, and we move, if you do so desire, to move A1-2. I just want to go through
Page 6.
Page 6.
6. Okay. No. Good. No. Good.
So
A1 is the original ordinance, which doesn't reflect any of the changes that were made and negotiated by the developers, the planning board, and after public input after that public hearing. A1-2, little 2, double I, is the amended ordinance. And I'm just going to go through that quickly. We did hear a lot about it. Section 1 does put this, Section 1 is the section in the current ordinances that define the sub-districts, which include Kettle Point, and we're adding just Metacomet to that sub-district, and gives it the address. Section 2 places this development in the waterfront special development district, and defines it further as a mix of commercial, office, retail, mixed density, residential, single-family townhouses, and multifamily condominiums, continuing care, fast food, conference centers, hotel, pharmacies, and recreation and outdoor uses. That's the modicum of development that can occur in the special district. Next section, in section 3, is probably the most important, is the use table. The use table defines what can and cannot be done in the district as a matter of right. You will see at the last column, we add the Metacomet sub-district, and you'll notice there are a number of strikeouts and different from what was originally proposed. And I will say that if you look at the footnotes, all the footnotes are stricken, and some of those footnotes are put limitations on the square footage of the buildings and whatnot. Those restrictions from a formality point after the law department got through it, I just thought it was better to put them in section 4 of this ordinance, which all the restrictions on the individual uses are in that district. Should be in that section. We can go through it if you want, but it's pretty self-explanatory. Going back to the use table, those in the use table that referenced by a Y is it's permitted as of right. C means that it's conditional use. In other words, it would have to have a set of different standards from the Waterfront Commission. An N means it is not permitted. So you're looking at 1, 2, 3 family home. 1, 2, and 3 family homes and condominiums are permitted as a matter of right, but they have to be in conjunction with a commercial, like a mixed-use commercial development as well. I'm not going to go through all the use tables, but you look at the second page, page 6. Funeral home is not permitted as a right, nor is a gasoline the dispensing facility. And there are other uses throughout, depending upon, office use, lodging, and whatnot that are all defined there. It's all self-explanatory. All the footnotes, as I indicated, have been stricken, and they are moved down to, turn to page, just bear with me, page 8, page 19 of the ordinance. It's section 8. And it says the following uses in the Metacomet subdistrict shall be further limited or defined as follows. And this is where the council has put limits, or at least proposed the limits. Again, limiting the square footage of a furniture store to 20,000 square feet. General merchandise is limited to 25,000 square feet. Publishing is limited to commercial, limited to consumer retail. Packaged liquor stores, as we heard from the beginning, is 7,500 square feet. So all these conditions we're taking out of the footnotes and just put into this section 4 of the ordinance. So they're all there. The planning department and the law department went ad nauseum through the minutes of the planning board, the recommendations of the planning board, the concerns of the public, as well as the concerns of the developer, and making sure that all the conditions that the developer agreed to after the planning board hearing are reflected in 8A through N. You'll notice on the map that, and one of the concerns that I had was that we really don't know where A, B, and C is, though we have an acreage. So one of the conditions of this zone approval will be that the applicant, if it's approved, they would have to provide us a Class 1 survey designating where A, B, and C is. That serves two purposes. One, we know that most of the development is going, all of the development is going to be in A, so we have to figure that out. As well as part of A is further limited, the side that abuts B. If we can go to the next slide where that shaded area is, there's a section that I think is limited to 4 stories.
And if anybody would like a copy, we have plenty of copies of this.
Yeah, this was also posted online. So 4 stories, height restrictions on that area that's shaded here on this map. That will also be further designated by a Class 1 survey. So there'll be no concern or dispute as to where those lines are, and so that we can, when it does go either before the Waterfront Commission or another commission or the zoning board, zoning or planning, we'll be able to know where that is. One of the misnomers that we've heard throughout this is that this council will, maintain control of this property. This is the only opportunity you have to continue control of this property, whether you rezone it or not. All future decisions as a development are, by the Rhode Island law, designated to 2 bodies: the planning board, the zoning board, or in this case, the waterfront district. So this is your one shot. So that's why if you see the limitations we put on those, because we are creating a new zone, we are allowed by state law to put those restrictions on the square footage of buildings and whatnot, because we are basically starting from scratch and putting a new zone overlay on this property. So that's where the restrictions come into. But once that decision is made, whether it's made or not tonight, the council's role is done. Whether it goes to the Waterfront Commission or some other commission or some other board within the city, that's a policy decision. But I just want to make it very clear. Once this decision is made, this board would have no say as to whether or not this development is, if you put a coffee shop or whatever it is. It's just outside of your scope. As you know, the underlying zone as it is, this entire property is open space 1. And I don't want to repeat myself, but I think the council needs to be aware, and I think you are aware, that under our current zoning code, open space 1 does allow a matter of uses as a matter of right. And that means that the developer, as the owner of the property today, without any action by this council, can use this property for a number of uses. And that includes a conservation area, a nursery, a live workspace, municipal facility, watershed protection or supply, park, playground, public or private elementary school, high school or junior high, church or other places of religious worship, cultural activity, sportsman's club, yacht club, hospital, cemetery, day or night camp for children, public utility, and a marina. Those are all the uses that are allowed as of right. So if the zone change is not made tonight, that's what the developer can do as a matter of right, and they would go through the normal process of going before the planning board for that approval.
Could you describe a little more live work?
Yeah, live work is kind of a new concept. It's been in the code for a while, but it's a building where you live there and you also work. So it might be like the old fashioned, you live above the store. So you may have a little art shop on the first floor and you maybe live upstairs. So
Isn't there a proportional like definition? It's like 67% live and 33. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
that's the ordinance as outlined. I did just want to correct something that was said, because when Mr. Harsh did speak about inadequate notice, and he kind of made my heart jump, suggested that 20% of the people did not get notice of this hearing tonight. We did send certified mail to the 193 abutters, which we're required to by law. They were sent certified, we got 5 back. That's 4%, not 20%. So I'm confident that notices was given, advertisement was appropriately put in the post for 3 consecutive weeks. So there's nothing preventing this council from acting on this if they so want. I'm going to read from the Rhode Island zoning handbook, because I usually read from treatises, but I'm going to read it just to educate the council and to educate the public. Aside from the required referral of a proposed zoning change to the planning board, adoption of a zoning ordinance need not, as a constitutional matter, be preceded by planning and study with participation of zoning experts. The role of the city and town councils have the power to adopt, amend, and repeal zoning ordinances, and they are given a broad latitude in such matters. The prime legislative function of a city or town in enacting zoning ordinances is to act as to preserve and promote the public health, safety, morals, and general welfare. Members of the city council are acting in a legislative capacity in enacting or amending a zoning ordinance. Unlike a judicial hearing where issues of fact must be resolved without respect to the personal views of the judge, a legislative hearing may reach a decision based in part, at least on the preconceptions or personal predilections of the legislators. So you do have broad latitude as to what you can and cannot do. Very few of this is reviewable other than the notice requirements, which I think we have adequately met. So procedurally, I think we're okay from a legal perspective. And now the decision rests in your sound judgment, and I'm here to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
So,
Thank you, Mr. Solicitor.
Mr. President, may I begin? I want to thank everybody who's reached out to all members of the council, especially me, to help educate me on a number of matters that I knew nothing about when we started off down this road. I probably read close to 10,000 pages of documents, laws, cases, proposals, letters, etc. I've talked to, it has to be upwards of 1,000 residents within the city at this point about this very matter. I want to point to something that Mr. Harsh said that I thought was particularly poignant, and I'm going to paraphrase, and paraphrasing an attorney is dangerous, but I'm stating that I'm paraphrasing. You mentioned that you represent a citizens group when you were at the podium earlier. I also represent a citizens group. That citizens group is the citizens of the city of East Providence. I want to point out something that Jessica Shaw said that I also thought was pretty poignant. This is not to cast any aspersions on anybody else said tonight, because it was all important. With regard to speaking with residents and listening to what they have to say, over the course of the last almost year, I've certainly done a lot more listening than talking. I'm out on baseball fields, coaching, pretty involved with the school department, talking to parents, talking to residents all over the place. My read on this particular issue is the city is split about 50-50. I predict that what's going to happen tonight is we're going to have a split council vote. I predict that there are going to be people in the city that are going to be happy with what we decide, and there are going to be people that are unhappy. And when we get up in the morning, we're going to have to pick up and make do and understand that we're all citizens of the same city. What this decision comes down to me, and I sort of gave a preview of it earlier, when I look at the proposed development here, the proposed request for rezoning, what I see is essentially some pieces that are sure things. I see a sure thing, I see a sure thing. To a lot of folks' point, there is a lot of room in here for the developer to maneuver and to make their best effort at recovering their investment and toward making money in the future. I know that there is a lot of distrust. I know that there is a lot of heat. I have spoken with the marshals in addition to speaking with residents of the city. I got the impression that what they put forth here is a sincere effort to make a compromise between the two sides of the city. I certainly got the effort that what they're proposing is something that they think will be attractive to the city. When I look at the decision that we have before us, which is either to rezone or not to rezone, on the side of not rezoning, I see an awful lot of question marks. As someone who is as heavily involved with the school department as I am very concerned about the ability to develop educational space within the open space requirements. That has a whole bunch of issues I don't want to get into. As someone who has previously worked in human services within the state, I do know the demand that is within the state for certain types of facilities which would be allowable under that zoning that I don't want on that property. And that people that I've spoken to don't want to see on that property. So when I weigh the knowns versus the unknowns, the knowns represent to me a much more attractive path than the unknowns. I think a lot of folks are conflating the idea of a no vote on a rezone as no development. I do not see that as a realistic scenario. I think development is going to happen on this property regardless of what the council votes tonight. I see this as an opportunity to have input and some control over what's developed. I see Plan B, or whatever you want to call it, as out of our hands and subject to whatever they can hash out with the planning department. I want to say one additional thing because I want to make it known where I stand with regard to the quality of the work that the Waterfront District has done in East Providence, and the quality that the planning department has put in place. I think that the planning department has done an excellent job with smaller developments and smaller decisions. I point out right in my ward on Pawtucket Avenue, the Dollar General that went in where Benny's used to be was a pretty contentious issue. People loved Benny's. People are kind of about Dollar General. I think the planning department did an excellent job, and the planning board did an excellent job of putting forth a building there that fits in with the context of the neighborhood. They particularly built it to be architecturally similar to the school across the street. That said, the planning department, I think, is very limited in what it can handle. I look at the developments that the Waterfront District Commission has put in place. I do not view Kettle Point as an abomination. I do not view University Orthopedics as an abomination. And I think most of the city feels the same way, that those are beneficial additions to the city. All of that said, I am not going to tell you that whatever happens here is not going to cause a traffic impact. It is, and anyone who says different is blowing smoke up your butt. It's going to have a traffic impact. It's a development, and it's a large one. It is going to present challenges with regard to disruption of the neighborhood, digging up construction vehicles. That's just fact. That happens with any development. But the way I see it, those challenges are coming regardless of how the council votes tonight. So my vote is for something that we know, for something that's guaranteed, for something that absolutely states in writing in ordinance that a large piece of this property is remaining as is, because a no vote is a question mark, and I can't put my head on my pillow at night with that question mark. All of that said, I would like to propose one additional change to the use table, and this is for the council's consideration. This is my perspective. I am very sensitive to what the neighbors have talked about with regard to traffic. I spend half of my life on Pierce Field, on the baseball fields. I see the size of the streets around Fort Fisher, Lyon. Those are tiny little streets. I do not think that the use of a hotel should be conditional. I think the use of a hotel should be a flat no in that table. That is my perspective. That's it.
At the appropriate time to make that amendment.
I will propose that amendment, assuming that the council has an appetite for it.
So, thank you, Councilman. So my position, again, weighs heavily on the voice of those that I was elected by, right? So we all have tough decisions to make throughout the city, and a lot of the decisions we make here impact all the residents, and in some situations it impacts a greater number of direct residents, though there's a bigger picture that direct affects everyone. We have, as mentioned, a lot of development in the city, and that is great. We want development, we want revenue, we want economical growth throughout the city, but not at the detriment of our livelihood, not at the detriment of our peace and our backyard. So we have to take that, I have to take that into consideration when making certain decisions as it pertains to neighborhoods. So if we're talking about a commercial corridor, an industrial area or zone, then there are appropriate things that can be built and developed in those areas, but not everything can be developed in an area just because it's available for development. I do think that there has been a lot of work done, and I know there's been a lot of work done with everybody involved on all sides of this project, and I commend the continuous work that will be done moving forward. I think that this plan has a lot of positives, and I think people have an appetite for some of that more than where we were over a month ago. But looking at this table and looking at it closely, it does not, in my opinion, still project a good picture for that area. If we're talking about redistricting to a different zone, we're talking about making a Metacomet district. Well, the Metacomet district subdivision abuts the veteran subdivision. So one, I'm not understanding why necessarily we have to create a new one when it abuts the property that currently already has a subdivision, which is the veteran subdivision, because it is on the Veterans Parkway. And a lot of, when I compare those two columns of uses, whether conditional yeses or nos, they're more in line with what I believe the voices have spoken in that area, that live in that area, those that travel that parkway. I don't in any form think that any type of light, heavy, or medium industrial or manufacturing belongs in that area for the reasons of size of the facility that it has to be, for reasons of vehicles that have to drive and get into that area, and noise and pollution that it's going to bring. We know manufacturing does bring a sense of pollution. We know that because we smell it across the river for those people, and I know it's gotten into the rest of the city. So it's a city problem, citywide, but it's more a direct problem for those living in that area. So that, for me, is, I have a lot of, and if the council would entertain, just as Councilman Cahoon has, I have amendments to the table as a whole. And they might be something that we want to talk through a little bit more. I know this has been a process that has been long and drawn out, and people have spent hours of their personal time, their professional time, but I want to give it its due diligence. And if we're going to make a vote to develop this property, which we know we're going to develop, and we want it to be the best development in our community, I think we have to pick it apart and make these little changes. And that to some might seem like it's being micromanaging, but I think that's the due diligence in this process. And I think that's what, as elected officials, people who are supposed to be the voice of those that come out and speak for or against, we have to take all of that into consideration. Because as we know, not everybody's going to like it, and I get that. And I might not like some of the things that get developed, but if I at least feel comfortable with a majority of the development and we come to some type of we close the gap a little bit more on the development and the usage, then I think you'll have a higher number of people who feel more comfortable, though they might not still want it because they reserve their feelings on open space and green space and animal, but they might feel a little bit more comfortable narrowing that percentage down. Where right now, I think there are a lot of people that are still, we're still very far from where we want to be, technically. So, sizes of buildings, anything more than 20,000 square feet, square footage in one building is a big, that's too big, And I understand we're talking about hundreds of acres here. It's a large property, I get that, but not one single building doesn't need to be that large in that area. Because if we have a 30 as the max, which it kind of looks like here, I have multiple papers, so it's hard to keep track of all of this in front of me, but we could have 30,000 square foot buildings. I mean, that's nauseating to think about in an area where it's heavily residential, very compact, very dense. It just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. Now, can we have smaller markets? Absolutely. Can we have smaller shops? Absolutely. It doesn't have to be that grotesque and that ginormous for it to be successful for the developers and what their business plan is. They can still make good money and do well and be successful, I think, in my opinion, with a smaller square footage. Height-wise, in the comprehensive plan, if we're talking about meeting those marks, right? You have to meet the marks that the planning board was tasked to do. I don't feel, in my personal opinion, that all those marks have been satisfied. And some of that has to do with just the area. So having a 5-story building, whether it's towards the Veterans Parkway more so and not towards the residential, 5 stories is still 5 stories. That's very tall. And I think that's taller than we need in that area. So I'm a favor of a mixed-use building, so commercial underneath or retail with no more than 4 stories. That is my personal opinion, and that's what I would propose as a condition in this. I would like for us to look at this and really look at the veteran subdivision column and make our, if we're going to create this new subdivision that is starting from scratch, more in line with what the veterans subdivision looks like, because that is the surrounding area. That is the area that in our planning we're supposed to be tasked with looking at when making these decisions. Now, if it's across the street of the parkway along the waterfront, well, that's appropriate because it's not in somebody's backyard, it's across the street from somebody that's not going to be affected by it. That property owner, or soon to be, we know that they have to make substantial changes to that area to even be able to develop that. And that's why it still hasn't been fully vetted, because there's a lot that needs to go into it. And they knew that going into the purchase. And I feel the same way with the developers now. I know that they've put in a lot of time and a lot of effort, and this is, I think, a continuous conversation to make these changes. I don't know if that is something that they're okay with, some of these changes. If that's something that, you have a taste for, that, but I can say with certainty that a lot, indoor agriculture growing, no. We don't even have a license, another liquor license to give in the city, but yet we have it as a use here on our table as an option. So are we going to circumvent what we already are maxed at and just create now a new liquor license or a liquor factory, or what is it here? They have a distributing center. That area doesn't, it's not meant for that. And it's not appropriate. It's not appropriate for those things. And I hope that the council can see that some of these asks are not appropriate for that area. And I know you have heard a lot of the stuff that the residents in that area talk about, green open space. I mean, that's not realistic. We know that's not realistic, but the realistic choices that we have here as a council is to make that area still a quality living area for that neighborhood and for the abutting surroundings like Pierce Field. You know, we want to make that bigger, better, more desirable. We're getting a lot more use out of it. So why would we be adding components to that area that are not in line with safety and good living for people in that area? Again, once these changes are made, we can't go back and redo or undo some of these changes. And I know maybe some people have the mind that, yeah, if it doesn't work out, we'll come back and we'll make restrictions. Well, that doesn't work well, because then we could potentially be opening ourselves up to, you know, maybe some litigation. You want to get it right the first time. And I know a year and a half is a long time to be talking about one particular topic, but it's worth talking about it because this is a lifetime change. It's a lifetime development that is going to have impacts on everybody involved. And I think we really need to consider all of that when making this final decision. Some things we just don't need on here, and you know, that's just at the end of the day the reality of it. And I can't imagine that a reasonable person wouldn't also agree with that, outside of someone that's trying to, you know, make money and do better and develop it. I get that part of it. I get that part of it. But we also have to consider quality of life in that area. And to speak to the council not having legislation and rules on, you know, what we can plant, and the waterfront district has a lot of good protection in place. Well, the council could do that, and the council does have the opportunity to do that. But unfortunately, when you have administration and legal or departments or whoever involved in that process of legislation, and it doesn't get passed, and it gets tabled, and you get sideballed, then those things can't come to the forefront, like a piece of legislation that went before the planning board and was tabled for further study by the legal department because they didn't get a chance to vet it themselves, because they weren't involved in the process of writing it. And it's been over a month, and there's still it's probably on the bottom of a pile with a couple of stacks of legal books on top of it, and it'll never get looked at because it's not something that they're interested in getting passed, because it doesn't positively affect their agenda. So no, it's difficult for councils to get legal stuff, legislation passed that has safe holdings for the community and development throughout the community and preserves our way of life, because we have people that work against us and not with us on topics that's not favorable to us. So when the time comes, after the council has said their, you know, their piece, I will be introducing those additional restrictions based on the quality of life for the citizens of this city who are have been, currently, will continue to be taxpayers and living in this city, but the remainder of their lives and their children's lives.
I'll go next, okay. So I'm starting to hear that, you know, there's a drift to, we acknowledge that it's going to be something there. The question is what? I would, a couple of the things that I've jotted down. I mean, eminent domain is not going to work. It's not something I support I want to be honest about that. It's not something I've heard from a lot of people in the city that they want to fund. It is not something that our bonding agents and the other agencies like Moody's and all those places that establish our credit, they have told us we should not go down that road. I think, and yet we're in a good economic, excuse me, we're in a good economic standing as a community. We've come a long way. So I don't want to see us jeopardize that. So for those wondering, I can't support opening up that discussion again about eminent domain. I thought the hotel issue was pretty much behind us, so I would be supportive of not going with the hotel. I mean, we acknowledge that there's a need and a hope to have some kind of a, lack of a better term, I don't know what it's going to be called, I'll call it like a banquet hall, place where people can, we can get a few hundred people together, and we have nothing left in the city to do that, so something like that could occur. In the beginning, when no one liked the first plan. I'm not sure that the Marshall team really loved it either, but that's what they started with. And most of us really didn't want to go with that. And that plan was withdrawn. There was no vote. When people would talk to me, they'd say, gee, it'd be nice if we could have some golf holes left. At least, if nothing else, keeps a lot of green space. And that wasn't in their original plan, but when the developer heard that, they said, well, we can do that. And so there are three main areas they really addressed well, I think. The 9 holes of golf, whether people golf or not, is going to be an open space. We're being told that there will never be a building on there, there will never be a shed or shack, nothing. If after so many years golf doesn't make money, and it doesn't work, it stays, and I'll call it deeded, I don't know, I'll let the legal people determine how we protect that, but that there will never be anything but grass there, open space. The city can do what they want. If you want to let people walk dogs on it, it's not going to be built on. The Fisher Street neighborhood was very upset. And I think all of us have walked there and talked to those folks, and the plan, I think, has accommodated that neighborhood for the most part. When you look from what the Fisher Street neighborhood sees now, they're going to see almost the same thing, only possibly better landscaped and cleaned up. And there are other walking areas and other green spaces within the complex, and talk about doing things to connect with Pierce Field. Whether that happens or not, there's an intent to look into it. And then there has to be some development there. You know, it was a private sale. I was one of the first elected officials who spoke to the press when they called me that night, 9 o'clock at my house, and said Metacomet was sold. And news to me, and we were just about on the council. I don't know anything about it. I said, well, what do you think about it? So I'd love to see it stay as Metacomet, but let's see what happens. And you know, it's a private sale between two private parties, and I think we're trying to do our best, our level best, to compromise and keep something that when you're driving down the parkway from a certain point coming from Riverside, you're still going to see some of the golf course, some of the greens, and then around the corner you're going to see some buildings, and whether it's 5 stories or 4 stories, yeah, you're going to see that. If we do nothing, they're able to do a lot of things. There's a question mark there, as Councilman Cahoon said. And I'm not going to repeat a lot of the things you said, Councilman. You and I don't really socialize. Sometimes we see each other on ball fields a lot, but we haven't talked about this privately or anything very specifically, but I agree with a lot of what you said tonight, and I'm not going to repeat all of that. So there's a lot of good here. We have a choice. We can do nothing as a council, walk away, and what happens, happens, or we can try to control it. I would ask the solicitor or council president that if I'm hearing correctly, no matter how a vote goes tonight, after tonight it's planning board, zoning board, and no longer comes back to us for any major decisions.
They would have to, obviously, it's not automatically tonight because they've got
Right,
all the
not tonight,
conditions
but
that.
I mean,
We say if they fail to meet any of the conditions, then the zoning ordinance would not be effective. So they've got to meet all the conditions that are set forth in section 4. And so there's sign-offs that need to be done by the planning board as far as this class 1 survey. Legal department's going to have to sign off on the deed restriction C. So there's still a long way to go, but the underlying concept would be there, assuming that they meet all the conditions. And then once they meet all those conditions, yes, the door is shut and we're done.
either way.
Either way.
My only concern is, I want to do this right. Councilwoman Souza has said, and she has some maybe added restrictions. Councilman Cahoon has recommended. I'd like to see that we don't have this big hotel back again in the plan. I don't know what Councilman Morado and Council President Brito will add. Can we do all this tonight? Can we get the language and get it correctly and not miss anything? If we can, we can. I'm willing to stay till whatever time it takes. Or do we need another night to all of us work on the language and come in with the restrictions? I'm good either way, but I want to do it correctly. And I would just add that I don't see this as an ending. I see it as a start. You know, we have professionals in the city that we have to lean on for recommendations, and we kick it to them. We make the best decision that we can make, and there are other things that are coming down the line. The development in the city, you can't say to a developer like Marshall or Acme or whoever it is, gee, there's an empty building on Smith Street, why don't you take that? It doesn't work that way. You know, we found a way to fill that Benny's building, and I had a few people say to me, oh, not another dollar store, you know, not another Dunkin' Donuts, but yet people love that. Is it Family Dollar or Dollar General? And I live near there. We go in there often. I've seen people in this room who told me they really like it. And it's a fact of life. It was better than leaving the old Benny's building empty, like there are in a couple of other cities, and then it starts to fall apart. The medical buildings that are coming to the city, I have no problem with that. Over the past couple of years, with family members, I've had to go through a lot of medical visits. I am in love with driving down Warren Avenue or the trail, or if I have to go to University Orthopedics, where there are free, large, safe parking lots. I used to have to go to the side streets of Rhode Island Hospital, Miriam Hospital, where there is no parking. If you found some, maybe you had to pay, or you parked blocks and blocks away. I was there one night with a family member, and at 2 in the morning, when I had to head home and leave the person there, I had to walk 5 blocks away behind Rhode Island Hospital. It was not a fun night. I mean, here, we can pull in, and I'm not saying I want to see medical buildings all over the city. What I'm saying is the few that we have are set back. They're not crowding anybody. They're doing the city well. I assume we're getting some tax money in for them. And it's a benefit to our residents, and I've heard a lot of people say that to me. I'm not advocating that for Metacomment. I'm talking about an analogy of development in the city. I wish the Capianato project on Newport Avenue would work a lot faster. There was another council that brought that here, but I was impressed with the plan. And I don't know if it's COVID or what, but they haven't put a shovel in the ground yet, but the plan is there, and hopefully they'll do that. We're being told that water and sewer connections for the Metacomet area are well within our region. It's not us thinking that, we're being told that by the independent engineers. I think they said something like 40% capacity of the sewer plant, we can withstand a lot more use there. So I'm not too concerned about city services being usurped. Schools, populations are down in Rhode Island everywhere. We went from a high of, and I did the numbers when I worked there, a high of 10,500 students in the system to about 6,000 now. Yeah, we might see a few more kick up, and we closed a couple of schools, but there's room in the schools. And most of the studies, I think, have shown that and will show that. So this is a good plan. I've had good feedback for it. My question now is, with some of these last minute changes and restrictions, can we do it neatly and correctly, because we're going to have one bite at the apple? I might have something more to say after, but that's it for now.
So my position has been, from the beginning, that Metacomet would be nice to be open space, and I keep referring and making a comparison to perhaps like Cold State Park. Unfortunately, the city did not have the foresight to make that happen when that came up for sale. So it is now back in private hands. We tried the eminent domain route. We explored that, and the answers that we got were that it was not going to be affordable. And at least we weren't going to have the cooperation to make that, come to fruition. So here we are today, once again. I met with the marshals after the eminent domain discussion was vetted, and we knew that at that point, eminent domain's been explored. Like some of the council members up here and some of their comments, I do like some of the plans and some of the buffers that they're offering. However, I do have some reservations. The hotel was a great point by Councilman Cahoon. I'm not in favor of a hotel. And Councilwoman Souza did bring up a couple of points also on the building sizes. And I'm also puzzled as to why wouldn't as with the 9.6 acres of proposed buffer zone that's going to be conveyed to the city, why wouldn't the 48 acres also be conveyed to the city rather than be restricted? Because the way I'm reading it, it's 48.1 acres to be restricted to only those uses allowed in open space zoning district to serve as a golf course. What happens when the golf course isn't producing or turning a profit? Does it go back to the developer and then they can develop whatever they want on that 48 acres? I don't know. My point is that should really be conveyed. If it's going to be given to the city, then it should be given to the city. And I'm going to just leave with this last point. I am not in favor of waterfront commission. I will never be in favor of waterfront commission. If that was removed from this, I would have no problem voting for this tonight in favor with some of the points that were brought up tonight. But other than that, I know where my vote stands. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Mr. Typo still here?
Yes.
I can't see if you are here. However, if he is here, or whether or not he's here or not, I just want to apologize for my outburst earlier this evening. So I want that to reflect on the record first and foremost. So last summer, when I had the opportunity to meet and speak with the developer, one of my biggest concerns was a hotel. One of the things I did not want was a hotel on that property. I was all for, as we all know, I was all for the development, but I did not want a hotel on that property. And I didn't want a hotel on that property because what we had experienced in Ward 1 on Newport Avenue, I didn't want those people to experience the same things that we experienced in Ward 1. With that being said, fast forward to this year, Mr. Crook had a rendering and his idea of what he thought the property should look like in the posts. And it gave me an idea that, you know, I'm gonna go against all my principles here and I'm gonna think out of the box. And this is the last thing I thought I would be saying here this evening or any time prior to this as well. That I kind of liked the idea when he had presented with the hotel. And I only liked the idea because it was a 4-star hotel. Not a 3-star, not a 3.5-star hotel, but a 4-star hotel. And I'm not talking about a box hotel, I'm talking about a Mediterranean type, as he had indicated, with rooftop restaurants. And I thought that would be ideal for the community. And I thought it would be ideal for the community because I thought with conferences, a conference room I should say, that people would have, or the neighbors would have the opportunity to utilize the conference rooms. In addition to that, we talked about the high school using the golf course, and I thought, wow, this would be a great opportunity for the high school to have their proms there as well. What better way of having the proms right there in the backyard here in our own city? Then I thought of all the banquet facilities that all the organizations that we have to go outside the city for the banquet facilities. And I thought, wow, we can utilize these rooms for banquet facilities as well. So it gave me a whole different perspective on the hotel, which is something I never did want to have in that parcel of land when I talked to the developers early on, and I had to think outside the box. So understanding that everybody is against the hotel, and I thought also one other thing is, imagine 4th of July fireworks going off, here you are sitting on a rooftop, you know, restaurant, watching the fireworks going off in the city or other cities as well. I thought this would be a great idea, but again, you know, it wasn't going to be a box hotel as we see, you know, downtown Providence. It would be something more spread out, Mediterranean style. So I would like to see it there, but understanding where everybody else is and where I was at one point in time, that it's not going to happen, but that was something that I felt that I had to think out of the box and share with everybody this evening. Open space, I just want to touch on open space because we talked about that a lot this evening and about changing open space. One of the things we did as a prior council, we approved the AAA lot 2017 from open space. We rezoned it from open space and we rezoned it to industrial space. That's why the AAA building that you see on Wampanoag Trail today, that was formerly open space. It is now zoned for industrial space. So we had changed open space in the past prior to this proposal that's being sent to us by Marshall Development. So that was the other thing I want to talk about. Rezoning. We constantly rezone all the time here. Former print source building, right directly across the street, Cafe Zara. That was rezoned. Just imagine if that wasn't rezoned, what it would look like. For 20 plus years, it was a former print source building. Rumford Chemical Building, that was rezoned. Look at development that brought over there. And Rumford Chemical Building. You know, we have what, Avenue Inn, we have the coffee shop there as well, and the pantry there. I mean, this is all rezoning that took place. So rezoning isn't always bad. Rezoning has been good for the city, for the most part, I would say. You know, early on last year, I talked about the differences between zoning and rezoning and why I was for this development. Because I've always said I didn't want to see this develop for what it's zoned for. I said that from day one. And I use the example over on Circle Drive off of Newport Avenue, where there was a 4-story apartment building. A couple of years ago, a year and a half ago, we had a developer came in and put right in the middle of the residential area, a 4-story apartment building there. The residents were outraged, hated it, didn't want it. The council wasn't aware of it. You know why? Because it was zoned for that. So it doesn't come in front of the council. It goes directly to planning. And that was one of the things and one of my concerns initially and early on about this proposal here. That if we were to go with what it was zoned for, and when I said this last year, then we wouldn't have a voice. We wouldn't be here. It would be developed for what it's zoned for all the things that the city solicitor had mentioned early on. During my conversation with the developer last summer, because my concern was when people were calling me, they were telling me all these different things that was going to be built or developed on this parcel of land. after I spoke with the developer and found out that nursing home's not gonna be on there, that was one of the things that they talked about, and a few other things that was never proposed, so that's why I felt the need to speak to the developer. But one of the things that I did talk to them about was a water taxi service. Maybe we can have a water taxi service over here somewhere in, off Veterans Memorial Boulevard. I mean, if you look at it, you know, that's what they laughed at at Indian Point Park, and look how successful it is today. It's very successful today, you know? And
You can't drive it in the cold. You gotta go under the bridge.
I'm not talking about the cove, I'm talking about the river. The river's right on the other side, the river is right on the other
No,
side.
but they don't own that property over there.
No, we cut a deal. You make deals with Live Nation. We put water taxi service on the Providence River and go across the other side without using the Red Bridge. Not in the cove.
Right.
Of course not in the cove. But look, it's successful in Indian Point Park. You laugh now, but people, you know, look what's happening over there today and how successful it is to go to Block Island. So that was another thought of mine that came to mind. With respect to traffic, one of the other things I thought of, and this was just a thought, I'm not a traffic engineer, but this was just a thought. The changes that were made in Boston on the I-93, where they shift the barriers during traffic hours, and perhaps maybe between the hours of, I don't know, 7 and 9, that coming out of Riverside, we open up 3 lanes as opposed to 2 lanes to come out as you approach. It's just a thought. It's just a thought. I'm not a traffic engineer. I'm just putting it out there. You have 3 lanes coming out of Riverside and 1 lane going into Riverside. And then as you go down to Newport Avenue, you do the exact same thing and open up the 3 lanes. It's just a thought. These are the things that were going through my mind at the time with respect to traffic. Again, I just put it out there in the sense that, you know, any way we can alleviate the traffic on the boulevard, excuse me, on the parkway, use that, no, here again, I'll hear about that tonight again. But these were the things that I thought of. These were the things that I thought that will be conducive to the area. And of course, there's going to come studies with all of this. So whether you like them or not, these are the things that I thought out early on. These are the things that I thought would be conducive to this area, whereas we don't want anything built for what it's zoned for. We have a voice for this plan right here. We do not have a voice. And that plan that was proposed for what it's zoned for with medical buildings, there were over 3,700 parking spots. 3,700 parking spots. That translates to all black tar to me. And I did not want that. And that was one of the reasons I said it then, and I'll say it now, as to why I was for the development of this property. So with that being said, I'm going to refer it over to the city solicitor so he can have his info.
I just want to clarify a couple things that were said on the record. First of all, Councilman Morado, as far as the restrictions on the golf course, that's dealt with on page 18. It is the area marked C on the map attached here to is addendum 1 shall only be used for the public golf course or for public green space. No building as defined in the ordinance shall be located on said area C other than buildings supporting the golf course and green space, such as a clubhouse, maintenance building, or restroom facilities. You'll notice that use is consistent with permitted as O1 has been stricken, so there are no uses stricken for O1. And the foregoing perpetual restriction shall be evidenced by an instrument recorded in the East Providence Land Evidence Record. So I guess if they deeded it to the town or the city, we wouldn't get taxes on it. But this is, just want to make it clear to the public and to you that this is deed restricted property. They are giving up all the O1 uses because of that deed restriction. So it's either going to be a golf course or green open space, and it'll be owned by them. And because it's owned by them, they'll be paying taxes to the city. The other thing I just want to correct for the record is this was not a Century 21 sale. There was no sign up on this golf course saying, please buy it. This was a private transaction that the city learned about after the fact. So there was no opportunity for the city to buy this property, even if we wanted to. And we did have an opportunity to buy it through eminent domain, and the city decided not to do so. So I don't want anyone to think that the city was given an offer to buy this property, and we refused to do so. This was a private transaction. It was never publicly up for sale. Again, there was no Century 21 sign. And again, if the city did want it, the opportunity to take it would have been by eminent domain, and that was refused by this council.
Thank you, Mr. Solicitor.
And I did,
I just want to add one more thing. Thank you for that clarification. which was really not necessary, about the Century 21 signs. Because the mayor knows exactly what takes place in the city. And that property was known that it was going to be for sale. And the foresight just wasn't there at the time to jump in and, make something of it.
I think
But I appreciate that.
take that up with the
Thank you.
mayor, not with me. The facts matter. Thank you.
So with that being said, I like the plan as is proposed. If we were to go ahead with a vote, I like it just the way it is, and that's my own personal opinion on that.
So I do have another question, and this is going to be for the solicitor. So on the section number 2, where it says the marked B on the map, which would be then, deeded to the city, is going to remain as open space. So is the city able, so there's been a lot of talk about a recreation center, buildings maybe going up in community buildings. Would you be able to do that under the open space?
So the city, I believe, is not subject, I don't know if Bill's still, I don't think the city's subject to its own zoning restrictions. So if we own it, we can pretty much do what we want because we're not subject to our own zoning restrictions. That's generally the law.
Okay.
City doesn't have to comply with its own zoning. We're usually exempted from our own zoning.
That's
But we will own that property outright. And that obviously protects the buffer area there.
And the golf course that's deeded or
Deed restricted,
deed restricted is to be maintained by Marshall.
but they're gonna own it.
They're gonna own and maintain it, we don't have to cut the grass or anything.
Right, and if things go wrong with it, I don't want to wish anybody, developer, any harm, but if it does not, cannot be a golf course, then it defaults to open space, green
And
space.
that includes irrigation, the whole thing, okay. Which, I was aware of that, we've been told that, but I know sometimes people say, no, that's not true, but I want to make it on the record clear.
So, I guess if I may, as it pertains to conditions and language of the subdivision, for me personally, to move forward with any type of consideration for this, definitely no, I mean, this is a residential area, it's an R1, so light industrial or any type of industrial is, in my opinion, prohibited in that area. It is not the place. We have specific areas in the community, such as the ones in the northern waterfront district that pertain to industrial, heavy, light, or medium, not in the southern. And I'm not interested in it starting in that corridor. So that, for me, needs to be stricken from this table as an option of the zone. Page 12 and 13. Continues on to 14.
I'm not seeing on page 12 where you're referring to. That's page 13.
Mine's 12. Mine's 12.
12.
12, 13, 14.
Councilwoman, this is the markup ordinance one, is that right? That you're,
Are you looking at the markup?
Yes.
okay.
Yes, the one where the footnotes are stricken. Right, that's the one you referred to? Correct, that's what I'm looking at.
So if anybody's following along in the crowd,
What
that's the
I'm
markup
proposing to
one.
strike on page 12?
The whole category of light industrial and flex. Correctly.
Well, light manufacturing is not permitted. Right now, it's an N.
Okay, so let me make myself clear one more time. That whole, everything under light industrial flex use in the table, I don't know if you're looking, if yours is set up the same way mine is in a table
This is
form.
exactly the same as mine.
Okay, so the lines, the boxes, the tables all the way down, the rest of that page, and then onto the subsequent page, we talk about a distributing center.
Why don't you give me the page number,
flex,
Councilwoman?
I did, and you
No,
said it's not yours. 12,
12 and
page 12, page 13, page 14. So I don't know if I was on a number correct, the same, but
So you're striking all of light industrial tech uses, which includes, well, some of them are already stricken, but so you're taking that whole category out?
yes,
That's the proposal is.
yeah. Yep, so all those,
And then
these,
13,
yep,
and then 14.
yeah.
12, 13, 14.
So I don't know if it makes more sense to come back and discuss this more. Again, that's industrial. That's not an industrial area. And no industrial, nothing industrial should be made in that area. That's a residential.
I'm not sure that all of the definitions of those things are necessarily associated with the definition of industrial. I mean, certainly nothing that I would be comfortable with just waving a wand and eliminating, you know, accessory retail industry, agriculture, aquaculture. You know, those are conditional use. Artisan design and fabrication, I don't know that I'd be comfortable just wiping that out.
Well, that fabrication, that's an industrial, it's a manufacturing, heavy manufacturing.
Right, but I have no idea what that does to the planning board's recommendation, etc.
Right. Again, but this is our opportunity to make these types of changes.
I mean, is that a motion? Are you proposing a motion to?
We'll have more concerns pertain to here, pertain to the overall. So,
Yeah, please.
height requirements, so currently,
Look, can we just stick on the light, so light industrial tech, is your motion to strike the entire division?
Yes.
yep, that was my motion.
Okay, just want to make sure. That's, so we'll be striking the use table at 12, 13,
Also motions.
no, it's a motion, I know, so that everyone understands. 12, 13, and 14, up until other uses. Next.
Sure. Again, we had, the planning board did prepare a memo which included all of the additional considerations that the applicant submitted, which included the prohibition of light industrial manufacturing, sale of business equipment requirement. There's, I don't know, 15 to 16 of the ones here that prohibit advanced manufacturing, so that's included in our memo. I'm not sure if that made its way to the use table, but we did outline these.
There are a number of uses in here that are not permitted as a matter of, not permitted, it's the
Right.
game.
Yeah, so yeah.
By
just
striking
wanted to-
all of it, we're striking all those other uses that some of them which are permitted.
Okay, I just want to make sure you were aware of the ones that we outlined.
Right,
Okay.
so just so we're clear, N means not permitted.
Yeah.
Sorry. N means not permitted, C means conditional use, and Y means permitted as of right. And there are a number of differences within that table where things are not allowed, and there are some that are, like a warehouse is not allowed in that zone. Advanced manufacturing is not allowed,
Okay.
so.
Yeah, as long as you have
Yeah,
the
totally.
accurate list, okay, thank you.
And then,
Distribution's not allowed, open storage, printing and publishing not allowed. Quite a bit, it's not.
but this was proposed to the council as a mixed-use commercial zone, not an industrial zone or a manufacturing zone. That's not how it was proposed to the council initially when developing this property. So I don't see why it would be now something on the
Okay,
table.
Mike, what is the difference between what the usage says and what the planning board's memo says, which is included in the ordinance? It says manufacturing is not allowed, period, end of story.
Right, there's certain manufacturing, like an artist design and fabrication, that's like that could be a small artist who like makes jewelry, right? That's not
Not
manufacturing.
manufacturing.
Right, that's not manufacturing. So even though this light industrial flex tech uses is a broad category, then you have to go within the use table as to the more, kind of maybe not perfect fits, but this is the use table that we have. But, I'm just trying to look at software design and advanced manufacturing, you wouldn't really think of software design as a industrial use, but, that's a bunch of guys around a computer sitting in an office, making up software code. That's, unfortunately, the way our code is written, that is considered a light industrial flex tech. So that's why it fits in. So you gotta go, you just can't go to the broad category, you gotta look. And so I believe the planning board, in taking out, there are a lot of ends in this category, like a warehouse, like a wholesale showroom with storage and facilities. Advanced
It's more a lot
manufacturing.
of conditional, not ends.
Well, I'm looking from page 14 up. Advanced manufacturing is no. Printing, bulking, printing and publishing, no. Industrial or manufacturing related office, that's a C, conditional use. So, there are other.
So you spoke about software design and advanced manufacturing, right, advancement, so,
Advanced manufacturing is a no.
but it says yes on here.
Page 14, advanced manufacturing, all the way
It
to the end.
says software
No.
design and advanced manufacturing, it says yes on my sheet,
Yeah,
so.
software design and advanced manufacturing, software, that's for software design. I'm looking at below that, it says advanced manufacturing, that's
I
a no.
understand that.
Council, I apologize for the interruption. Do you want to extend the meeting, make a motion to extend the meeting since it's past
Well-
midnight?
Sure. Motion to extend the meeting to time indefinite.
Second.
Just so we have something on the record.
Anyone opposed? No one opposed? Okay.
Thank
All
you.
right, so hang on. We've got a motion over there to eliminate that whole section, right? Right? Is there a motion?
Your motion,
There was a
because
motion.
you said you had more.
Well, to do it one at a time, let's do it one at a time.
So can you repeat the motion?
The motion is to strike from this table the section of anything in the table that is under the title light industrial and flex tech use.
Okay, would anyone like to second that motion? No one second the motion? Motion fails.
I think, Councilwoman, it was just, too general.
Well, so is it some of these terms, so one can't say that there isn't going to be a bigger, so the solicitor's saying, well, it could be a couple of guys just building codes. Well, it could be a bigger project than that. It could be a bigger building, and it could be more techy, or building computers, or building other electronics. I mean, it could be building, I don't know.
I'm all right with
medical-
software,
medical
computers.
technology.
So can we get to something we can vote on and complete this, right? So,
So height requirements, my other issue, and square footage. So I think some of this proposal talks about 30,000 square feet of a footprint of a building, and that is a large section. So depending on what it is, that would be okay, but not for everything. A supermarket shouldn't be 20,000 square, we don't need a 20,000 square foot supermarket in that area.
so do you have specific recommendations as to
Yeah,
what it
less
should
than
be?
20,000
So that's not what I said yet. That could be
Well, for
0,
super-
1, 19,000.
for any type of general store, like a supermarket.
You have to give a specific, you have to
But
follow,
this is what,
you have to follow the, I don't mean to be rude.
no, I know, but
You have to
that's
follow
like,
the-
there's a lot of stuff that I have questions about on this, and that I have restrictions for, so I don't think it's something that it can just be,
Oh, it's up
done
to you.
quickly.
That's up to you.
And I know that other people don't feel that way, but that's the reality of it. So maybe somebody else would like to start there, what they're comfortable with doing, and then I'll add mine to it.
I'm comfortable with the entire package the way it is.
Right, because it's not in your backyard, Councilman,
No, That's,
And it's
well,
not-
I've always been,
you know?
from day one I have been.
So, all right, Mike, help me to include, to vote on the correct one, which is A2, which includes the planning board amendments, right? They want it.
Yeah.
And then let me have your page 6, because my page 6 is now.
Okay, that Councilman?
Agenda.
So, Mike, the first thing to do is to make a motion to amend that ordinance, if what I want to do is change the use table from conditional to no under hotel, correct?
Correct.
All right. So I move to amend,
Can we just refer the page number in the ordinance that we did? In the actual ordinance.
So let me see.
All right, so it's
Page two.
page 8.
Page 8 on the amended.
No, page 8,
Oh,
changing the C to an N.
So move to amend, this is microphone. Move to amend the amendment of the ordinance to amend Chapter 19, 472, entitled Subdistricts defined as Article 9 Waterfront Special Development Districts and Use Table of Chapter 9 of Zoning, Substitute A of number 1-I, which reflects proposed changes recommended by the East Providence Planning Department and petitioner acceptance as follows. Amend the use table, specifically page 8, under hotel, changing the use from conditional to no,
To an N.
to an N, which means no.
So I think the clerk and I have that.
I have it. I have it.
So there's a motion.
Page 8, hotel conditional to no.
C A N.
okay.
Yep.
Motion.
So that is a motion. Would anyone like to second that motion?
I'll second.
Okay, Madam Clerk, roll call. Oh, this is, oh,
Discussion. Discussion.
discussion. We have a discussion. Okay. You made a motion. Okay, we have a motion, we'll second it. Roll call vote, please.
Councilwoman Souza.
Aye.
Councilman Cahoon.
Aye.
Councilman Morado.
Aye.
Council Vice President Rodrick.
Aye.
Council President Bruno.
Aye.
So instead of
Next motion.
amendment being made,
Can we just go back to 1 second? Sorry. Let's do this. A1I on the agenda.
yeah,
I think because we're not dealing with that any longer, we should move to indefinitely postpone that ordinance.
move to indefinitely postpone item A1A on the agenda.
Which is the zoning as submitted by the petitioner as of May 11th, 2021.
Correct.
So let's move the table indefinitely.
So this is the end of the ordinance of chapter 19, this one here, okay.
That's the pre-planning board change.
Correct.
Okay. So we do have a motion, did you form that in a motion, Council?
I did.
Yes.
Okay, would anyone like to second that motion?
So that-
Second.
Okay, Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Councilwoman Souza.
Aye.
Councilman Cahoon.
Aye.
Councilman Morado.
Aye.
Council Vice President Rodrick.
Aye.
Council President Bruno.
Aye.
All right.
Okay.
So that one is up.
We're done, it's off the table.
So that said, move to approve item A12, amendment of ordinance to amend chapter 19-472 entitled Subdistricts defined of Article 9 Waterfront Special Development Districts and use table of chapter 9 of zoning, sub-A number 1.I, which reflects proposed changes recommended by the East Providence Planning Department and petitioner acceptance as amended.
Correct. And second, then I just want to make sure that, once I get a second, so we're just talking this right now?
Second.
So just so you know, so this is now the ordinance as proposed with your...
Yeah.
Sorry. This is the ordinance as proposed as amended.
And we will, we have discussion, but we need to adopt the findings of fact that support the amendment as stated in the planning department report of June 25th, 2021.
And that needs to be...
In the record as well, so you're formally adopting those findings of fact, without saying them, but yes.
So we're adopting the findings of fact.
On the planning board.
Is an amendment or a motion?
No, it's part of the motion.
So I will amend my motion accordingly to adopt said findings of fact from the planning board memo. Now, would it be the memo of the 25th or the 29th?
25th and 29th.
The 25th and the memos of the 25th and the 29th.
Correct.
I'll amend my second to second that.
Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Just want to make sure this is right. 25th and 29th. Okay, thank you. Councilwoman Souza.
Nay.
Councilman Cahoon.
Right.
Councilman Morado.
Nay.
Council Vice President Rodrick.
Aye.
And Council President Bruno.
Aye.
Then we have the comprehensive plan, which is item A1, Roman numeral 3.
So, Mike, moving on to the comprehensive plan item, that requires no amendment because the use tables are not part of the comprehensive plan, correct? So that can go just as is, that's the motion.
We could also adopt the findings of fact as, that support the amendment of the comprehensive plan.
Got it. So move to approve an ordinance and amendment of the East Providence Comprehensive Plan 2010 to 2015 to identify the property designated as Assessor's Map 107, Block 15, Parcel 1, as a new sub-district of the East Providence Waterfront Special Development District, and adopt the findings of fact from the Planning Board memorandums of 25 and 2019.
(625) and 629, 2021.
Correct.
Thank you.
So this would be essentially turning over the, this project to the waterfront district, is that correct?
Those two ordinances together would do that, yes. Right.
We already,
Second.
We already- the first
First one.
did.
Right,
that's already passed.
right. This is amending.
This is just amending the comprehensive plan.
It's that last ordinance.
Three. And three.
And adopting the findings.
Yes, I did, adopting the findings of fact on the memo. So there was a motion and a second.
So which one has the table? Did that one
That was the first one we voted on, was
With your amendment.
the zoning tables, yep,
with your amendment? on?
yep.
Did we make the, did we pass your amendment first and then the
Yes.
table? Okay.
Yes.
Motion in second.
The second was, Council Vice President.
Yes.
Thank you.